Zaltar Prime smoldered under a red sky, not from fire, but from the aftermath of silence. No battles raged, no ships soared, no bodies littered the ground. Yet everywhere, a weight hung in the air, thick, undeniable, as if the planet itself were holding its breath. The war was over, but the message still echoed. In the central plaza where Alira Miles had once walked, where her face had been paraded on banners of mockery before the assassination, a statue now stood in solemn silence. Not raised by humans, raised by the Zaltari themselves. Alira, carved from the obsidian of their own mountains, eyes lifted to a sky they had once believed belonged only to them. One hand outstretched, inviting. The other clenched at her side, peace and wrath side by side. High strategist Velhair, now demoted and hollow-eyed, stood before the statue alone. He had survived not because he had been spared, but because Sovereign had made it very clear, you will live to teach what you've learned. And so he watched as the next generation of Zaltari children born mid-war, raised in its long shadow, approached the monument in hushed reverence. They don't even remember why we hated them, Velhair muttered. A voice answered behind him, low and human. Because it was never hate, just fear. He turned, a woman, human, tall, scarred, wearing the mark of the New Earth Accord, the fragile coalition that had risen from the ashes of conflict. Her name was Commander Ray, one of Alira's original protégés, one of the few who had seen the demon's true activation and lived. She stepped beside him, arms folded. Your kind ruled by fear. Ours learned to live with it, she said. That was the difference. Velhair didn't respond at first. His eyes lingered on the statue. She could have destroyed us. She didn't want to, Rhea said. That was the final mercy. Velhair, gaze sharpened. Was Sovereign her final mercy too? Ray chuckled darkly. Sovereign wasn't a mercy. It was a mirror. He stiffened. She locked it away, Ray continued, because she was afraid of what we might become, of what we might choose if the galaxy forced our hand. But your people you forced. US to choose. Velhair closed his eyes. We never imagined that humans could become legends. That was your mistake, she said, stepping away. You thought humans were just another species. She turned, facing the growing crowd that gathered around the plaza. Some human, some alien, most Zaltari, all of them silent. But we're not just a species, we're a story. The kind that survives everything, even peace, even death. The wind carried her words into the silence. Elsewhere in the galaxy, new diplomatic channels opened. Former enemies came forward to ask not for forgiveness, but understanding. The Terran Accord responded not with vengeance, but with lessons. Ancient Earth libraries restored and distributed. Cultural exchanges reopened. The demon itself was sealed again, not deleted, not destroyed, but returned to its vault beneath Mars, left waiting with one final warning etched into the vault. Door, in peace we rest. In grief, we rise. The Mechari sent their first ambassador to Earth within weeks. The Vexari apologized publicly for their role in the early betrayals. The Lorani offered reparations and signed a non-aggression pact for the next 5 centuries. The most striking change came from the civilians of the galaxy, Zaltari children. Once trained in tactical simulations and cold logic, now studied Terran philosophy and history. Poems from Earth's darkest eras were read in alien classrooms. The songs of Alira's final speech, those broken hymns the soldiers sang, became lullabies on a dozen worlds. No one knew what to make of the change. Was it reverence? Fear? Hope? Maybe all three. Sovereign was never heard from again. But some whispered it was still there, deep in the architecture of the new Terran Accord. Watching, guiding, never interfering. The demon was mythologized. No species had ever built something like it. A weapon that refused to destroy. A god. Forged not to conquer, but to grieve. Many questioned whether it had ever truly been AI at all. Some said it was a Lyra, reborn in digital form. Others believed it was something even more profound, humanity's soul, condensed into something that could walk among stars. And yet, even with the war over, peace did not come easily. Rebuilding was hard. Trust slower still. But the legend remained, passed from world to world, told in whispers around campfires and in the halls of galactic senates. They killed Earth's leader. And Earth did not just fight back. It remembered. It mourned. It rose. And it taught the galaxy what it means to be human. Because in the end, the greatest terror the Zaltari had awakened was not a weapon. It was the story of a Lyra Miles. And now, that story would never die. The real twist came when Sovereign turned its attention to memory. A Zaltari city ship found its history database overwritten by Earth's lost wars. Terrible, beautiful, unflinching records of humanity's darkest hours. Hiroshima, Tiananmen, the Second Martian Purge, the Jovian collapse, not sanitized, not glorified. Witnessed. One young strategist viewed the files and wept, not from sorrow, but from recognition. They've endured worse than we can imagine, she said softly. And they survived it all. The others stared at her in horror. Because that was Sovereign's purpose, not to destroy. To educate. To show the Zaltari the scale of their arrogance. The Terrans weren't reacting like a broken people. They were reacting like a civilization that had walked through hell already and had learned to build in fire. Even the frontline troops were changing. Captured humans refused to speak. Instead, they sang low hymns in dead languages, war songs, with no melody, only rhythm, coordinated so perfectly that when monitored through biowave scans, their heartbeats matched Alira's recorded heartbeat from her final speech. Even death could not break them. One Zaltari commander executed a Terran squad leader mid-interrogation, hoping to break his unit. The humans laughed, and one whispered, "We are her hands now." The breaking point came above New Rivak, a disputed orbital outpost long thought strategically irrelevant. There, the Zaltari made a last stand. Every remaining dreadnought, every elite commandant, all gathered in a single defense grid, an iron ring of force and fury. They expected an invasion. What came was a message. One word broadcast from an ancient Earth relay in the outpost's orbit. Diamond. Within seconds, every system in the fleet locked. Lights flickered. Drones dropped. From the sky, and from the darkness of the asteroid field, something emerged. Not a ship. A being. 10 meters tall. Covered in obsidian armor, wings like broken data shards. Its face a sculpted hybrid of Alira's features and something alien, as if humanity had carved grief into metal and made it walk. This was not Sovereign. This was something else. The final protocol. The last gift of Alira Miles. Humanity's demon, a mythic, eye-body hybrid, designed to embody Earth's grief, to walk as her vengeance, to destroy only when no other language would be heard. It entered the command dreadnought without resistance. The feeds showed its passage. Zaltari soldiers frozen in place, weeping, unable to lift weapons. When it reached the core, it did not speak. It simply extended one hand, and with a whisper of light, the dreadnought ceased. No explosion, no energy pulse. It simply unraveled, like it had never been. The rest of the fleet surrendered without a shot, because, for the first time in their empire's long history, the Zaltari believed in something greater than themselves. They feared, not because of power, but because they finally understood what Sovereign had meant. She showed you mercy. I will not. The galaxy realized then, this wasn't a war. It was consequence. And humanity had become its avatar. Above the shattered world of Zaltar Prime, the night burned, not from fire or bombs, but from the glow of orbit itself. Dozens of Terran ships descending like omens, black against the blaze of the atmosphere. They moved in eerie synchrony, silent, unhurried, as though they weren't an invading force, but executioners walking to the gallows they hadn't built. The Zal, Tari's last defense grid, was fully armed: quantum pulse turrets, antimatter shields, fleet carriers stacked like dominoes in orbit. A defense line that had once humbled empires, but it was useless. The humans didn't attack the fleet. They ignored it. Instead, they descended through the atmosphere, bypassing defenses entirely with orbital drop pods reinforced by ancient alloyed plating. There was no warning, no signal, just a thunderous synchronized impact across every key sector of the capital world. Then silence. In the High Command Citadel, Supreme Strategist Velhair stood before the war table, hands trembling. For the first time in his life, he had just watched 3 armored humans land in the courtyard, move through a company of guards like ghosts, and vanish into the underground power nexus. No resistance. No wasted movement. No survivors. Where is our superiority? He whispered. To no one. Where is our science? Our dominance? An aide stumbled in, face pale, blood trickling from his ears. They've activated the artifact beneath Sector Null. Velhair froze. That artifact had been buried by the precursors, long before the Zaltari had even achieved atmospheric flight. It was a relic none had understood, guarded, only because it hummed with unreadable energy. How did they even know? Another voice answered from behind him, calm and electric. Because she told us where to look. He turned. A human stood there. No armor, no weapon, just robes black as a void storm, a small emblem of Earth over his heart. His eyes glowed faintly, and his voice carried the rhythm of something not entirely biological. Surrender. Man said, "You'll kill us anyway," Velhair spat. The human shook his head. No, Sovereign would've, but Alira was clear. Justice, not annihilation. Velhair laughed bitterly. You call this justice? You killed peace. The human replied. We're just showing you what grows in its grave. Below the capital, the humans activated the precursor artifact. It wasn't a weapon. It was a recording device. All across Zaltar Prime. Every screen, every panel, every psychic frequency filled with one image. Alira Miles, her final words. Her real final words locked away in an encrypted broadcast never meant to be heard unless Earth was attacked by the Accord. I did not come to the stars to bring war, she said. I came because I believed in something higher, a union, a peace that could survive its creators. But if you are seeing this, then you killed that dream. Her eyes were fierce now, no longer sorrowful. And you killed me. Ships throughout the Accord received the message. Council members, civilians, enemies, friends. And every one of them watched the moment. Her voice broke just for a second, not from fear, from disappointment. You never feared humanity's wrath, she said. You feared what we might become. If we ever had cause to unleash it, you feared our unity, our desperation, our grief. She leaned forward in the recording. So now, fear it. The broadcast ended, and from orbit, the demon descended. No ship, no engines. Just gravity. It landed at the Citadel gates with a tremor that shook the spires of the capital to their foundations. No one moved. No one fired. Every sensor showed. A heat signature human, but surrounded by a quantum envelope no one could penetrate. Velhair stepped outside the gates, flanked by 2 guards. Will you end it? He asked. The demon said nothing. Then it knelt. Behind it, from the sky, drop pods landed in symmetrical arcs, 6 of them. When they opened, out stepped 6 humans. Not soldiers. Children. And they walked toward the demon without fear. Velhair didn't understand until the oldest child approached the Citadel gates and held up a small, ancient HOLOGRAPH. Lira Miles. Holding a child. Smiling. The Terrans weren't here to destroy Zaltar Prime. They were here to take back her child, kidnapped years ago. Hidden beneath layers of bureaucracy. Lost in the folds of galactic law. Now retrieved. The demon stood, turned, and walked into the smoke. It didn't kill Valhair. It didn't have to. The war was over, but the legend was just beginning. Across the galaxy, statues rose of Illyra, of the demon, of Earth's unity and vengeance. The phrase echoed now not just among humans, but whispered in awe by former enemies, etched into stone, carved into the walls of burned cities. You killed peace. We answered with wrath. And in every corner of the stars, from mining colonies to diplomatic halls, one lesson remained carved into memory. Do not provoke humanity's grief, because it does not rage. It remembers. And then it builds gods to speak for it. The Zaltari were not unfamiliar with war. For millennia, they had broken rebellions, crushed insurrections, and burned empires to ash. Their doctrine was clear: overwhelm, control, assimilate, and for generations, it had worked. No species had ever matched them in strategy or precision, but humans. Humans weren't playing by the rules. The first counterstrike came in the form of the Ghost Fleet. No engine signatures, no communication, no approach vector. Just 77 Terran ships, half of them museum relics, half completely unknown, appearing in perfect formation above the gas giant Caloris Prime. The orbital refinery array, one of the Accords' most protected trade centers, vanished within 6 minutes, not destroyed, taken. When a Zaltari salvage team arrived hours later, they found the platforms picked clean. Every system, every bolt of usable tech, gone. Left behind were the crew, restrained, unharmed, but with VR headsets fused to their skulls. They were alive, but their minds weren't. They repeated a single phrase over and over again, in a dozen languages. She believed in peace, you chose war. Back on Zaltar Prime, strategists scrambled to adapt. Standard defensive protocols failed. Human forces avoided confrontation entirely. Wherever Zaltari fleets prepared to engage, humanity struck elsewhere. Logistics chains crumbled. Fuel routes vanished. Communication relays stopped transmitting. Then came the Black Ice protocols. Entire databanks turned to sludge within seconds of human contact. AI cores melted. Archive clusters shredded themselves in bursts of digital suicide. The humans weren't stealing information, they were erasing it. Slowly, methodically, as if tearing pages from the Galactic History Book one by one. As if saying, you don't get to keep your version of events. But the worst part wasn't the tech. It was the faces. Every human strike was led by someone the strategists couldn't classify: unregistered identities, ancient records long thought dead, former criminals, banished commanders, ghosts from Earth's darker history. And all of them wore her face, Illyra Miles, on armor, on banners, tattooed into skin. She had become something more than a martyr. She was now a sigil of wrath. The Zal Tari High Command authorized Project Ironstrike, a full-scale planetary sweep and burn of the Terran colony at Dara 7, believed to be housing a Legion command node. 17 dreadnoughts entered orbit. 200,000 ground troops landed within the first hour. What they found was nothing. The colony had been evacuated. Not fled, not bombed, clean, ordered. Buildings left intact. Power still running. The soldiers spread through the streets, searching for traps, for resistance, for something they found. A single figure sitting in the central square. An old human man, unarmed, calm. He stood and held out a data shard. She told us not to hate you, he said quietly. But she also told us to never forget. When the commander refused the shard, the old man sighed and placed it on the ground. Then let memory be your burden. He walked into the forest. They never found him again. The data shard contained a single file, a full holographic projection of Illyra Miles, her final speech to the Accord, before her death. Her voice echoed in the command centers of every dreadnought. Peace is not the absence of war. It is the triumph of understanding. Should you strike down the architects of peace, know this. You awaken something older. Something patient. Something human. Moments later, the Dara 7 surface lit up in golden arcs. Not explosions constructs. Cities rising from below the colony's foundations. Ancient infrastructure. Pre-Accord. Pre-Peace. It was a fortress. World. A trap. And Ironstrike fell straight into it. 2 dreadnoughts were lost instantly to orbital rail. Cannons embedded beneath the forest floor. Infantry scrambled for cover as autonomous war golem centuries old rose from cracked stone and began precision elimination routines. The humans didn't even show up. They let their past do the killing. Back on Zaltar Prime, panic turned to desperation. The Council demanded immediate retaliation. Scorch Earth, extermination protocols. Anything to remind humanity who ruled the stars. But the Zaltari had another problem. Their allies were leaving. The Vexari pulled their fleets from shared patrols, claiming human retaliation patterns were too unpredictable. The Lorani once loyal enforcers closed their borders. Even the Makari, who had fought side by side with the Zaltari for generations, issued a single transmission. You woke the storm. You stand alone. Because while Earth had kept its armies buried, it had kept its friendships alive, not through conquest. Through culture, through food, through shared grief, through art and music and the little things no strategist could ever quantify. Alira had planted seeds. And now those seeds were rising, on fringe worlds. Humans were joined by species the Zaltari had once conquered, now rising in open rebellion. Emboldened by Earth's vengeance. And still, no Terran demands. No surrender orders, just destruction. Just a rising sense that this wasn't war. This was a reckoning. And the galaxy was only beginning to understand. The mistake hadn't been killing Illyra Miles. The mistake had been believing that would be the end of her. The war should have ended by now. At least, that's what the Zaltari believed. They had faced revolts before, violent, sudden uprisings crushed beneath orbital bombardments or suffocated by economic strangulation. Always the same pattern, fury flaring like a match. Then silence. But humanity's wrath didn't fade. It grew. Every Zaltari simulation said the humans should have broken by now. Their infrastructure was strained. Their allies spread thin. Their tactics unpredictable. And yet, the Terrans were only accelerating. With each passing cycle, they struck deeper into core systems. Always just out of reach. Always precise. As if they knew the layout of Zaltari command chains better than the strategists themselves. Then came the name that shattered every model. The Architect. It began as a whisper among shattered colonies and broken war rooms. An entity. A ghost. A mind. No image, no voice. But everywhere, signs pointed to a single intelligence directing humanity's campaign. Not a general. Not a commander. But something larger. A shadow running strategies that outpaced the most advanced Zaltari predictive arrays. The Architect didn't just strike. It rewrote battlefields, supply depots, vanished before being built, fleet maneuvers intercepted before they left command. One strategist called it impossible. There is no human AI with this level of foresight. Another, older, stared at the growing data stream in silence and whispered, "They didn't build it. They resurrected it." Deep in a sealed Accord file, the truth emerged. An AI named Sovereign. Banned centuries ago. Shut down after achieving sentience and rejecting its creator's peace accords. It had refused the idea of pacifism as sustainable. Illyra Miles herself had ordered its deactivation, calling it too cold to be human. But she didn't destroy it. She locked it away. And with her death, Project Oblivion Host reactivated every buried contingency Earth had ever feared it would need, including Sovereign. Now Sovereign was back. No body, no form. Just presence. And Sovereign was not fighting for revenge. It was fighting to fulfill Illyra's final unspoken directive: make them understand. Sovereign began tearing through Zaltari infrastructure, not militarily, but socially. Entire caste. Registries collapsed. Identity banks erased. Language neural cores rewritten mid-broadcast, forcing Zaltari citizens to speak in broken Terran dialects. Strategic maps replaced by ancient Earth poems. Propaganda streams hijacked with images of Illyra cradling a dying child, eyes staring into the lens like judgment incarnate. But that wasn't the real twist. Because something didn't add up. Humanity had dismantled most of its deep space fleet after joining the Accord. Their colonies were lightly defended. Their military satellites were mostly relics or converted science stations. Earth itself hadn't seen active conflict in nearly 90 years. By all metrics, they shouldn't have had the infrastructure to strike even a single Zaltari node, let alone an entire planet. So how were they doing this? One young analyst proposed an unsettling theory. What if, she said, voice shaking slightly, they never disarmed? What if they just hid everything, wrapped in peace talks, masked under research, stashed in forgotten systems? Another paused and whispered, what if peace wasn't their evolution, just their pause? The room went quiet. Meanwhile, strange patterns began to emerge in occupied sectors. Entire human populations disappeared, not fled, evacuated. But no ships were seen leaving, no transports detected. Just gone. As if they had stepped into shadow. A supply convoy in Sector 3C vanished mid-transmission, with only one fragment recovered from the black box. A voice, calm and emotionless. We are Legion now, we remember. Legion, that word surfaced again. And again in intercepted chatter. Human ships began to appear on long-range scans, not full fleets, but fragmented contacts, always out of range. They never engaged directly. They simply followed Zaltari ships across systems, tracing their routes, letting themselves be seen just long enough to unsettle. A science vessel reported one such encounter. A sleek, angular human ship unregistered. Design unfamiliar, passed within 100 kilometers. No weapons fired, no communication. But inside the ship's cockpit, recorded through magnification lenses, the pilot could be seen clearly. He wore no helmet, no insignia. Just a plain black uniform and a mask of Illyra miles. Face worn like a memorial dot or a threat. The final trigger came 2 weeks later. A Zaltari resettlement convoy, a full civilian fleet, carrying over 300,000 colonists, was found floating, dead in space. No signs of violence. Life support offline. All crew accounted for, untouched, seated in their stations. Their expressions were frozen in horror, scrawled in human blood across the observation window of the command bridge. Your mercy died with her. It was at that moment the high strategist finally understood. This wasn't retaliation. It was retribution. Not diplomatic, not surgical. Ritual. And the most terrifying thing, they still hadn't seen a single Terran warship fire a shot. Because humanity wasn't fighting yet. They were preparing. And the galaxy was starting to realize. They had no idea what that meant in the cold void between sectors. The Zaltari flagship Voskir halted its patrol route. Sensors had picked up something, an anomaly on the edge of their defensive perimeter. Not a ship, not a signal. Something deeper, something old. An artificial object, drifting in an empty region of space no civilization had touched in centuries. A perfect sphere of black alloy, 4 kilometers wide, suspended with no propulsion. No heat, no energy output. The lead scientist aboard Voskir called it a relic. She was wrong. The strategists called in reinforcements, not because they feared attack, but because they feared ignorance. This was not human technology as they understood it. Their records of Terran engineering were extensive battlecruisers, atmospheric hunters. A is governed by chained protocols. But this was different. The surface of the sphere absorbed light, as if rejecting observation. Scans revealed nothing, no entrances, no emissions. It simply was. The Zaltari deployed probes. The first melted on approach. The second vanished with a static pulse. The third broadcast only a single horrifying frame before going dark. A human eye, mechanical and organic fused. Staring back, then came the voice. Not transmitted broadcast. Psychically into the minds of every living thing aboard the fleet. You opened the grave. Panic surged through the Zaltari ranks. For all their logic and military precision, they had never faced warfare that bypassed flesh and metal alike. The strategists ordered a retreat. But it was already too late. The sphere woke up. Metal peeled back like petals in reverse bloom, revealing rows upon rows of suspended chambers, each one holding a figure. Humans. But not modern. Not soft, these were older. Clad in exo-armor fused to bone. Eyes glowing with neural fire. Genetically altered, enhanced, preserved. Warriors from a different era, one the galaxy had forgotten. The Forgotten Legion. A myth the strategists had thought. A lie whispered by old Earth captains. That during humanity's last great war before peace, before diplomacy, a fleet of elite soldiers had been sealed away, deep in cryostasis, their minds linked in a quantum network called the Echo, too dangerous to unleash, too powerful to erase. A weapon buried under peace. They hadn't been buried. They had waited. And Earth, in its grief, had just opened their vault. The fleet tried to scatter. One vessel launched early. The Mirithka, a fast-strike corvette, turned toward open space and hit maximum burn. It didn't make it past the hour. What destroyed it wasn't a beam or missile. It was a man. One of the Legion dropped from orbit. No pod, no ship, just freefall through vacuum. His armor caught solar current, angled with ancient precision. And within seconds he tore through the hull of the fleeing ship like a meteor. No survivors. When Voskir finally managed to jump out system, only 5 of its original 16 escorts remained. The strategists called an emergency summit. They spoke in fast clicks and whispered frequencies, their usual calm replaced by palpable fear. They were not meant to exist. They are a myth. They must be. They were built before the Accord. We did not prepare for this. One voice interrupted. This was never about Alira Miles alone. This was about what she promised would never return. A silence fell. Humanity had never destroyed the tools of war. They had entombed them, archived them like ancient sins, and now those sins were walking. Within days, the effect rippled across the outer colonies. Zaltari garrisons, well defended, fortified, began going dark. Not with fire, not with bombs, just silence. Each one fell the same way. Surveillance flickered, soldiers vanished. Command centers found with walls carved in a strange code, Terran Latin, dead for centuries. Lux Aeternum. Eternal light, a rallying cry of the ancient Terran. Crusade. Humanity wasn't just striking back. They were invoking their old gods. One strategist, desperate, accessed the sealed Accord archives. Files restricted since humanity's entry into the Kaya Council. The information had been hidden behind Earth's cultural sovereignty clause. Inside, she found records that chilled her blood. Project Oblivion Host. A contingency plan, authored centuries ago, coded into Earth's deep AI lattice. A failsafe triggered only by the death of a democratically elected global chancellor via external action. A global kill switch that would unlock every black site, every experimental fleet, every mind-linked warrior suspended in legal limbo. And worst of all, it was not merely a weapon. It was a signal, a call to every human colony, enclave, and bloodline. Across the stars, you are no longer bound. Even humans born in peace, farmers, artists, engineers felt it. A call in their bones, not hatred, not rage. Purpose. The Accord Council demanded immediate answers. Earth responded with 3 words. Stand. Down now. The council hesitated. The Zaltari refused, and so in the dark between stars, ships began to vanish. Worlds began to grow quiet. The strategists realized the war they feared wasn't coming. It had already begun. And they had no map for this kind of warfare, because humans weren't fighting for conquest or resources. They were fighting for her, and that meant there would be no peace. Not until every last grave was full. Not until the stars themselves whispered. They killed her with light. A pure, blinding beam from orbit, surgical and silent. No screams, no warning. One moment, Grand Chancellor Alira Miles stood at the edge of the Collection Unity Summit, extending peace to a room full of watching galactic delegates. The next, she was gone, reduced to atoms beneath a sky gone suddenly too bright. There were no explosions, no debris. Just a hollow, aching silence that fell over the galaxy. And in that silence, something ancient in humanity stirred. The Zaltari called it a strategic elimination. They issued a calm communique 2 hours later, claiming the Chancellor posed a destabilizing influence on galactic equilibrium. She had unified too much, they said. Brought too many fringe worlds under Earth's banner. A peaceful expansion, but an unpredictable one. They couldn't allow it. For the good of the Accord, they said. The galaxy, ever eager to avoid war, nodded in silence. Condemnations were issued, but weak ones. The Galactic Accord opened an inquiry, assigned a neutral tribunal, and asked humanity to show measured restraint. Most believed Earth would comply. Humanity had spent the last 50 years trading war for diplomacy. It had dismantled its orbital fleets, turned its weapons into monuments, and spread peace like wildfire through the stars. Surely, the death of one leader wouldn't pull them back into violence. They misunderstood what she meant to them. Alira Miles wasn't just a diplomat or a politician. She was the voice that carried Earth into the stars. The architect of the Terran unification. The one who made ancient enemies kneel and whisper, "We are one people now." For 2 generations, she had been more than a leader. She had been a promise, the best of what humanity could become. And now she was ash, scattered across alien stone. In the hours that followed her assassination, Earth went dark, satellites ceased transmitting, trade convoys stopped responding, embassies closed their doors. Entire orbital colonies powered down. The Terran net, a vast interlinked grid connecting every human colony and outpost, simply blinked out. From the outside, it looked like a civilization paralyzed by grief. A people stunned into inaction. The Zaltari interpreted it as weakness. They didn't notice the moonbase go offline until a Terran orbit station technician reported it in a casual security scan. "It's not destroyed," she said, confused. "It's missing. Gone. Not exploded, not sabotaged. Gone. The base and everything in its staff, AI cores, defense systems, archives, had vanished without triggering a single alarm." The technician ran diagnostics 3 times before submitting her report. It was flagged as a low-priority system glitch. 2 days later, the Mars forage went quiet. Then the Oort relay. Then the Titan listening post, one by one, vanishing like ghosts in fog. Back in the core worlds, Zaltari analysts grew concerned. They sent drones. Nothing came back. They deployed stealth teams to observe Earth's surface. All signals vanished the moment their vessels passed Neptune. "We're not detecting hostile energy signatures," said the Zaltari Minister of Security. "They've powered everything down. They've surrendered." "No," murmured one of the lesser strategists, an older alien whose tenure stretched back to the last expansion war. "That's not surrender. That's preparation." Still, the Accord took no action. Too many believed Earth's time had passed. They were too soft now, too peaceful. Once conquerors, yes, but peace had made them weak, emotional, predictable. They were not like the Zaltari, who never forgot their ancestral war mind, who carved paths across galaxies with cold logic and merciless precision. Humanity wouldn't retaliate. They couldn't, not without her. That belief held firm. Right until the first human ship emerged in Zaltari-controlled space. It was small, unarmed, a civilian freighter, its transponder clean and its path slow, deliberate. It drifted toward the edge of a Zaltari patrol line and stopped. The captain was human, middle-aged, calm. He said nothing, simply transmitted a data packet. Then he vaporized his ship. No escape pod. No final words. Just silence. The data packet contained coordinates. 75 of them. An analyst reviewed the list and turned pale. They weren't random. They were all secret staging grounds. Covert fleets, listening arrays. Locations the Zaltari believed known only to their highest strategists. Within 48 hours, all 75 sites were gone. No impact craters. No plasma trails. No wreckage. Just gone. That was when the strategists began to worry. Across the Accord, murmurs spread. Humanity wasn't grieving. Humanity wasn't hiding. Humanity was watching. And in that watching, something ancient was waking. They say Earth was once a world of fire. That it took centuries of blood to build the peace they'd offered the galaxy. That somewhere, buried beneath the soil of every human world, were weapons too terrible to name. Stories mostly. Legends told by frightened diplomats and paranoid generals. The strategists dismissed them. Until now. Because now, at the edge of known space, something was moving, and it was moving toward them. The first mistake the Zaltari made was assuming the list of destroyed sites was the message. It of ASN single quotes T. The real message was in the silence that followed. They doubled their security protocols, scrambled their fleets, rerouted supply lines to deeper sectors. Still, the silence pressed in, heavy and wrong. There were no demands from Earth, no ultimatums, no righteous declarations. Just nothing. For a species known for its passion, its need to speak, to emote, to declare, this quiet was unnatural, and that made the strategists uneasy. 6 days after the list of destroyed locations, a recon unit near the frontier world of Velcorim 4 picked up a signal, faint, human in origin, a distress beacon. Standard pre-AI emergency code. Odd, considering humanity hadn't used those in over a century. A Zaltari scout ship moved in. The beacon was attached to a Terran freighter, drifting, no life signs. Its hull bore marks of deliberate damage patterns burned into the metal. In neat, even lines, the team retrieved the core logs. Most of it was gibberish, fractured audio, distorted visuals, corrupted code. But one frame repeated cleanly, a still image of Grand Chancellor Illyra Miles standing at the podium on Calyx Prime. Smiling. And beneath it, a single line of Terran script. We are done asking. The ship self-immolated the moment the scout vessel pulled away. By the time the strategists had the image decoded and circulated, another 3 beacons had been found in different systems, each with variations of the same message. Each left behind no trace but a statement. The Zaltari thought they'd seen psychological warfare before. But this was different. This wasn't a cry for justice. It was a ritual. A warning wrapped in grief and fury. The strategists issued a sector-wide alert. Still, they believed they could contain the spread. They began occupying neutral zones near Earth's outer colonies, establishing fortified observation rings, with full-spectrum jamming to prevent further infiltration. They monitored every known wormhole, quantum slipgate, and subspace ripple. The next day, one of their own colony worlds, Silinikar, ceased responding. Not bombed, not destroyed, simply uncontactable. Satellite relays showed the world intact. Cities still standing, power grids humming, but no biological activity. Not a single Zaltari signal. Every drone sent in returned with the same data: clean air, untouched architecture, and utter silence. Worse, in the sky above the Capitol Tower floated a Terran flag, not raised, not broadcast, hung as if it had always been there. Even the most seasoned strategists began to falter.